not objectively reasonable. That is the conclusion of an internal investigation where they were looking into the shooting death, some would say murder, of Airman First Class Roger Fortson. We have the name of the deputy who did it. His name is Eddie Duran, and Eddie comes from the same sheriff's department in Okaloosa County that produced Jesse Hernandez, who, in a crazed, nonsensical, insane flood of emotion after hearing a sound which was simply an acorn on the top of his cruiser, thinking it was a gunshot, mag dumped in the back of his cruiser to a guy that he had just frisked, handcuffed behind his back, and threw him in the back of that cruiser. This is the same department. Just keep that in mind as we go through this news story.
We've got breaking details tonight about the now former Okaloosa County Sheriff Deputy who shot and killed Senior Airman Roger Fortson earlier this month. Deputy Eddie Duran was fired today after an internal investigation determined his use of deadly force was, quote, not objectively reasonable. And tonight we have been digging through this 29-page report. It breaks down the investigation, and for the first time, we are learning about what Duran told investigators about that deadly encounter. When he was asked what he was thinking when he shot Fortson, Duran replied, quote, "It's him or me at this point."
Going to the door for what possibly is a domestic call. Now, we covered this the first time this came out a couple videos back, and we talked about the many errors that have taken place, including the Karen who calls 911 for a supposed argument that's going on in apartment 1401. Turns out Roger Fortson was alone playing video games, FaceTiming his girlfriend. So all that was completely bogus. So you have a Karen who's calling the emergency services number, getting cops involved, trigger happy cops who are typically militarized, who are on a hairpin trigger anyway, going to apartment number 1401. And then the second mistake is if somebody is banging at your door and they say they're the cops, it's almost never a good idea to answer the door. But Roger Fortson answers the door. And the second thing you don't want to do is, if you're going to answer the door and it is the cops, arrive at the door with a firearm in your hand. That's almost certainly a death sentence. So while they call this a tragic incident, some people would call it an outright murder. What do you call it?
About to see, you may find disturbing.
The body cam video is still hard to watch. Okaloosa County Sheriff Deputy Eddie Duran shooting Senior Airman Roger Fortson 5 times at point-blank range. It happened May 3rd at an apartment complex in Fort Walton Beach. Duran responded after an apartment employee called 911, saying Fortson's next-door neighbor reported a fight inside Fortson's apartment. During a sworn interview last week, Duran told investigators he didn't hear any disturbance as he approached Fortson's apartment. He also told investigators he didn't identify himself after that first knock because he wanted to see what the response was going to be. Duran said he heard a voice inside saying something about police, which led him to believe the person inside knew he was at the door.
Sheriff's office, open the door!
Now, it looks like the way the cop is doing this, the way Eddie Duran is doing this, he's knocking on the door and he's stepping away from the door. So if you wanted to look out the peephole to verify who it was, if it was actually with the sheriff's department, you couldn't do it because Duran is not standing in front of the door.
Deputy knocking twice more, announcing himself both times. Fortson opening the door after the third knock with a gun in his right hand that was pointing down. Duran told investigators he saw the gun and aggression in Fortson's eyes, saying, quote, "It was a stare, not so much a, like I said, inquisitive look. So that showed me there was aggression. That showed me there was obviously is a little bit of discontent for me knocking at the door," end quote. Duran also told investigators Fortson made a slight step towards him, which he considered, quote, resistance. When he was asked why he decided to use deadly force, Duran said, quote, in all honesty, he's got me. It's
him or me at this point, and I need to act as opposed to react. That's what you were doing, was reacting.
End quote. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement is conducting a separate criminal investigation.
The civil rights attorney, Ben Crump, who is representing the Fortson family, released a statement a few hours ago. It reads in part, while the criminal investigation is still ongoing, we fully anticipate charges to be filed against this officer. The video footage provides damning proof that this was a brutal and senseless killing of a young man who was simply enjoying time alone with his dog while video chatting with his girlfriend. This report, it also includes an interview with Fortson's next-door neighbor, who called the apartment's main office, claiming that she heard the physical disturbance in Fortson's apartment. During the interview, she told an investigator that she only heard one voice coming from the apartment, saying she just assumed two people were inside. Fortson, of course, was home alone. Now you can read.
So they call the emergency services number based 100% on admitted assumption. I assume that there were two people in there. I heard arguing going on. Better call the police. I mean, nothing the police can't solve, right?
Okaloosa County Sheriff Eric Aden has released the name of the deputy who shot and killed a Hurlburt Field Airman and has also decided to fire him. Aden made the announcement today as he released the sheriff.
Fire him? The guy should be in prison, right? In my opinion, Eddie Duran, ex-deputy Eddie Duran, should be in jail right now awaiting trial for a murder, not just fired. And his pension and all of his assets should be liquidated and given to the family, and it shouldn't cost the taxpayers anything.
Sheriff's Office internal administrative investigation of the May 3rd shooting for 23-year-old Roger Fortson. Deputy Eddie Duran showed up to Fortson's Fort Walton Beach apartment in response to a domestic violence report. When Fortson answered the door, Duran's body camera video, as you see here, shows Fortson holding a gun in his right hand. It was pointed at the floor. Duran's gun was already drawn. He fired 5 shots at Fortson in just under 1 second. He was hit several times in the chest. Fortson later died at a hospital from his wounds. The statement releasing the internal investigation results, the Sheriff Aden wrote, "This tragic incident should have never occurred."
Let's just get this straight. It's not just a tragic incident. This isn't an accident. This isn't there's ice on the road and somebody got into an accident. That would be a tragic incident. This is, in the opinion of some, an intentional murder by a guy who's out there supposed to be protecting and serving the public.
The objective facts do not support the use of deadly force as an appropriate response to Mr. Fortson's actions. Mr. Fortson did not commit any crime. By all accounts, he was an exceptional airman and individual. He went on to say in this case, the former deputy did not meet the standard of objective reasonableness and his use of control to resistance was excessive. They
wouldn't say that about you if you offed one of their officers in self-defense. They would say, this is clear cut. We know this was a murder. This officer, this hero in our community, he needlessly died at the hands of that murderer. If the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be using different terminology.
Criminal investigation only determined whether or not Eddie Duran followed Sheriff's Office policy and procedures. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement is conducting a criminal investigation into the shooting. If they come back with similar findings, Duran could face criminal charges in Fortson's death.
Could face criminal charges. Do you think he actually will? I don't think he will. One more news report here.
Tonight, we're hearing the 911 calls, an employee of the apartment complex making the first call on behalf of a resident who made a complaint.
He's fighting with someone else, and she's saying that it sounds like it's getting a little bit out of control, but we can't go there to confront them, so I was wondering if you guys can send a call out for that. The apartment number is going to be 1401. She called, when she called me, she said that she was calling me because it sounded like it was starting to get out of hand. She said that it sounded like it started getting physical.
Well, our deputy is there.
Okay. Let me see.
We have 2 deputies getting on scene.
Are they fighting or something?
In this body camera video, you can hear Okaloosa County Sheriff's deputies talking to the employee.
Okay.
But this time it sounded like it was getting out of hand.
Okay, which door?
After knocking, the deputy steps away for several seconds before announcing himself twice.
Sheriff's office, open the door!
Fortson answering the door moments later.
You know what they could have done? The deputy is standing there by the door, listening. Doesn't sound like anything's going on here. Calling the apartment manager and saying, hey, do we have a phone number for the guy in 1401? Maybe I should just call him and see what's going on. Instead of this face-to-face confrontation, guy opens the door, guns in his hand, the quick draw McGraw, takes 5 shots in less than a second, ends a life. Maybe there are other options that can be considered in these kind of situations.
More 911 calls followed, this time from a resident.
Have you heard anything else other than the arguing?
Yeah, I just heard, like, I promise you, it sounded like 3 or 4 gunshots, and then a bunch of running and screaming.
23-year-old Fortson's family and their lawyer, civil rights attorney Ben Crump, argues the shooting was completely unjustified and that the deputy had gone to the wrong apartment.
The police already know before they get there. They've been told.
A lot of people say that this guy is nothing short of a parasite. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But the bottom line is, from all the facts that we've been able to scrape, it looks like this cop didn't just create a tragic incident. It looks like it was just a cold murder by an untrained cop. Or maybe he's trained to do what he did. But he didn't respond like regular people would respond. The guy clearly has his gun pointed to the ground. His finger's not on the trigger. He's coming to the door of his castle, his domain. And now everything just escalates from here because a boy in blue is on the scene.
That where the disturbance is at, there's a male and a female. Roger was in his apartment by himself, FaceTiming with his girlfriend.
Fortson was laid to rest in Atlanta May 17th, 2 weeks after the shooting, his Air Force comrades filing in to honor the decorated airman who served his country. The investigation still ongoing, now in the hands of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
His name is Eddie Duran, former deputy Eddie Duran, who was fired for an unfortunate incident. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comments section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member, but more importantly, know what your rights are and operate within your rights. If you don't exercise your rights, you will lose them. I will see you in the next video.